Alrighty guys, yo, ladies and gentlemen, the long-awaited in-depth set guide finally been made by yours truly. Now, if you don't know who I am, my name is BC and I have mained Zed since Season 9. I have consistently been the highest ranked Zed in EUS for the past years, and I've also been consistently the highest LPR of all Zed one-tricks compared to other regions, especially in Europe. I have been challenger since Season 11 and I have around 5 million mastery points on Zed. In this video, I will go over as much detail as I possibly can for anyone to be able to pick up Zed. Of course, there will be some questions that may not be answered. However, you can always find my live gameplay on my Twitch at twitch.tv/bz_eus, and you can ask anything on there or any of my socials linked down below in the description. I have picked 1250 LP, rank 18 on the ladder. I was the first Zed also in EUS to get challenger playing only Zed with a 66% win rate. I have displayed that no matter the state of Zed, it is still possible to get challenger no matter the meta. Before I get into this guide, again, some of your questions may not be answered, and with that in mind, do comment down below in the comments or on socials, and I'll be sure to answer every single question. Alright, let's get started. Okay, so for Zed's best runes, I think the only keystones that you can run are between Conqueror, Electrocute, or First Strike. Now, firstly, with Conqueror, where would you go Conqueror? So if you're playing into a comp that consists of health, your bruiser champs, you obviously need DPS, because you will not be able to burst or one-shot these champs. So that's where Conqueror comes into play. Obviously with Conqueror, the longer you're in fights, the more damage you get, and the later the game goes, the more damage you will gain from this rune as it scales per level. But the main strength of Conqueror overall is the team fighting power that you have. The sustained damage from Conqueror, plus you have Presence of Mind as well, so you can't just run out of energy. It's a really good pairing to beating these tanks, especially with the items that you will buy with this setup. For the second tree, this depends on the lane, so basically, if you're playing into a hard lane where you want extra sustain, so it could be some sort of control mage that is oppressive, like Hwei, for example, you can obviously then go Absorb Life to end your lane. But if it's a chill lane and it's a lane that you don't really care about, you would go Presence of Mind because this is the best rune, right, for team fighting. In the legend section, your best option is 100% the haste one, almost every single game. I mean, you just get 15 unconditional haste, right? Or basic haste. And the main thing is that this rune lets you buy any defensive boot that you want, basically, because if you go this, you have 15 haste, so you don't need to buy lucidity boots, basically, to make up for that loss of haste, right? So you're then allowed to buy Tabais or Mercs if so needed in the game, right? Then in the last page, I never go Cryptogra. It's like almost never. I mean, ever since Cutdown got buffed now, Cutdown is just basically a better version of Cryptogra. Cutdown works as in if they're above half-life, you're doing bonus damage to them. That's any single champ in the game. So this rune will always be effective, basically. And last time can be nice as well if you build quite healthy. So if you go Shoujo or Cleaver in your build, then last time will be fine, right? Because obviously the lower you get, the more damage you'll do. But yeah, that just depends on comps. If it's a comp that you can't burst through, then last will be better, right? Because the fights will be long, you'll get low, so you'll do damage eventually. I mean, your damage will kick in from this rune, but if not, then cut down. Firstly, for Conqueror, I mean, you can either go between Inspiration, Resolve, or Sorcery. So if you're playing fully for lane, I would go this help right here. So I would go Transcendent Scorch and obviously paired with this. So Scorch and Cutdown is very, very strong paired together. You're doing 20 extra damage on your Qs early game if they're above half-life, which is really strong. Now I will show two scenarios, one without having Scorch and Cutdown and one whilst having both the runes. So in the first clip, I don't have either rune, and I'm doing 71 damage per Q on Talon, right? Now in this clip, I'm hitting Talon with both my Scorch and Cutdown, and I'm doing, well, this is a visual bug by the way, so it's not doing 77 damage, it's doing plus 8 damage, so it's 79 damage with Cutdown, plus Scorch is also visually bugged, it should be 15 damage, so you're doing 23 more damage on your Qs by having both these runes together, which is quite a lot early game. Very, very noticeable in these early game fights, right? And obviously pair this with double adaptive in HP just to be as strong as possible in the game. Now this could be going into matchups where you can actually fist fight early, like Silas for example, or even into Assassins, so you can actually brute force with the HP that you have. If it's a tough lane that is very hard to trade back into. So this could be like into Aurelia or an Acton or stuff like that, right? Then I think bone plating is mandatory. Now, if you go bone plating, you can then obviously trade in and eat a large chunk of the damage, or you can, if you miss space, then bone plating will save your life as well, right? Okay, now here I will show you two examples of the Renekton matchup whilst having bone plating and without having bone plating. So in this scenario here, he will proc my bone plating with his empowered W. And you can see that I took way less damage. I reduced 120 damage from bone plating here, which is a lot of damage early game, by the way. Now here is without bone plating, and you can see it did way more damage. I blocked half damage just from having bone plating itself. So very important in lanes like this that are very volatile and hard to approach. Now with this, you can either go Demolish or you can go Overgrowth. So if you're playing side lane a lot, Demolish would be very good because obviously you can make immense pressure on side with this. You're just gonna one-shot towers. But if you want to play purely for fighting still, you can go bone plating plus Overgrowth together just to be as healthy as possible late into the game. Now lastly, you can also go Inspiration. This is best for scaling in my opinion. You can go either cashback to obviously get gold back on items that you buy, or you can either go between Tonic. Tonic is good because you get the damage elixir level 6 to help get solo kills. But again, like I explained earlier, with first strike, you can go Jack of all trades. So that if you go Doran's Blade, you go scaling HP, scaling haste, sorry, you will have 10% CDL level 1 just to make it easy to CS. Or obviously, if you don't want that either, you can just go for lower summoner haste, which is also valuable. So yeah, this all just comes down to preference. But the main two to go between is definitely between sorcery and resolve, though, in my opinion, and never domination. Okay, now in regards to electrocute, this rune got buffed a few patches ago, so it's actually quite nice now again. It's gained 20 damage, I think, the early game, and also has a reduced cooldown now from 25 to 20 seconds. Now, this rune is very good in comps that you can basically just activate lethality into, or you can burst through. So, if you're playing into a comp that consists of a lot of squishy targets, then going this rune is, in my opinion, the best in that case. As in, you will just itemize lethality, you just burst someone, and your goal is done for the fight, basically, right? Now, in terms of keystones and domination, obviously electrocute is the best option. I would never go Dark Harvest or Healer Blades. For this first tree, Cheap Shot I would never go. Taste of Blood is good in lanes that are tough, so again, if you're playing into like a control mage or a lane that you fight a lot early into, then this estate could be useful for lane, right? Otherwise, just go Sudden Impact for the best scaling. In terms of the second tree, or the second line, sorry, I would always go Eyeball because, I mean, you have KP, you get AD. The other two are conditional, right? Ghost Poro, I mean, you're never going to utilize. You should always aim to buy Sweeper on first or second base, so you will never be utilizing Ghost Poro at all in a game. And Zombie Wood can be nice, but I mean, this rune is very flip. Even in Challenger, you're never going to get this rune fully procced without buying Umbro, which is not worth anyway, so I would never go these other two runes, just always go Eyeball. In terms of the hunters, this comes down to preference between Relentless and Ultimate Hunter. So Treasure Hunter, I think, is quite dead. I mean, Zed can't skirmish a lot early, and Zed doesn't roam a lot either, so getting this rune to kick it early is like almost impossible, I would say. Relentless is good because obviously having move speed in solo queue is so valuable. Having moves on map, just rotating to skirmishes that much faster than your opponent, it's very important, but that comes down to preference, right? And obviously Ultimate Hunter. Ultimate Hunter is my personal favorite, and this is what I almost always go, just so I could have lower downtime on my ult, which leads to having more solo kills in lane. From these two runes, so this comes down to preference, but I would personally just always go Ultimate Hunter, just so I could play for lane, which is just how I play, basically. So now with Electrocute, I only go Sorcery or Precision Secondary. Now this rune page is probably the strongest rune setup that you can go early game, right? Having Scorch, Taste of Blood, Flat HP, you'll probably go Ignite as well with this rune page. This is probably the strongest setup that you can go if you want to play solely for early game or early lane. But if you value some sort of scaling with Electrocute, you can opt for Cut Down instead. And again, you know how Cut Down works. If they're above half-life, you do more damage. So if you flank or if you get your catches off, you're just gonna one-shot anyway, right? With having this setup. So yeah, that just comes down to comps and preference as well. Now last but definitely not least is First Strike. Now this rune got nerfed, so it's not as effective as it was, but it's still fine in some lanes where you just can't like basically kill. So if you're playing a lane where your goal in the game is to just get the items as soon as possible and you can't really kill the opponent, so this could be good in matchups such as well, tanks or healthy champs again. So basically a conqueror. So if you're playing two champs like Vladimir, you will come with this guy, you get your 20 gold, and by like 8-9 minutes, if you guys are both neutral, you will get your Eclipse. So that's the best part about First Strike. You just get your items way quicker. So this rune is all about economy basically. So in the first tree, I would always go cashback. Footwear you can go if you want to. So this rune has more value early game since you obviously get 300 gold for free by the boots, but cashback is better in the long run. Now, I would always go cashback just because I think having tier 1 boots early can be such a good difference in matchups in terms of spacing. And yeah. In the second tree, I would always go tonic. I mean, triple time warp tonic is useless. Biscuit is also useless on the you don't need any of these. I would always just go triple tonic, get your skill up, get your 40 gold from first elixir, and you also get damage elixir, which can help to solo kill. And the last tree, this depends. So you can either go Cosmic Insight, which obviously reduces your summoner cooldowns and your item haste, or you can go Jack of all trades. Now, Jack of all trades is very weird, but if you go Doran's Blade, then this rune could be actually good since you gain 3 haste just from buying Doran's Blade. Now, this is paired well with the haste shot instead of the adaptive shot that you choose after your main rune page, right? Since you will get 10% CD level 1 if you go this Doran's Blade plus the 8 haste shot. So that could help in lanes where you're strong to CS in, since your Q will be down to 5.5 second cooldown, I think, or 5.4 maybe. So yeah. Okay, now with First Strike, my go-to secondary setup with this is Precision with Scaling Haste plus Cut Down, just so I can yeah, basically do as much damage as possible, as well as scale as well. The Resolve, I never go First Strike basically, because I mean, if you're gonna go Resolve, then you're probably gonna go Conqueror, right? And you can go Sorcery as well, again, for early game if you want to, but yeah. So just to summarize these rune pages that I've just mentioned, you go Conqueror if you want DPS and if you want to excel at team fights. You go Electrocute if you want to single out champions in a certain game and you just want to itemize lethality and burst through. Or you go First Strike if you want to scale and get to items as soon as possible. Now, whatever you play obviously has its own unique playstyle, and it's also down to preference as well. Because, I mean, to be fair, you could probably just get away with any of the runes in most games, but I don't like to do that. I like to be as efficient as possible, so wherever I deem to be best in a game, I will go. Alright, so I will now discuss what I think are the best items for Zed. Now, there are many different builds that you can go, but obviously I will go the build that I think is best in terms of starting items and actual builds. Now, to begin with, I'll discuss starting items. Between the starting items that I buy, I either go Doran's Blade, Doran's Shield, or Longsword. Now, Doran's Blade, you can go into matchups where you fight a lot early or you just want to maximize laning. So this could be matchups like Assassins or into Bruises because of the 100 health that you get from the item, which is very impactful. Not even in just laning, but throughout the game. You can keep this item and just keep the 300 HP, right? This makes early matchups like Silas like way more bearable because you have more HP to fight with, just more leverage basically. Torrent Shield, you go into matchups where you take a lot of harass early game, which is basically the go-to right now in this meta, right? With the meta being Corki, Tristana mid every single game, or Huawei. So to endure laning phase, you go Torrent Shield just to get through laning phase and to get as much CS as possible without being killed or losing too much. Now, if you go Longsword, this is probably the best for overall laning since you can go sword in 3 pots. Now, if you go sword in 3 pots, you're most likely going to run Ignite as well, right? Just to obviously capitalize on your early game. Now, this is good for matchups where you can actually kill early. So again, it's matchups like assassins basically. But I never go sword 3 pots, only if I'm smurfing maybe. But even then, if I'm ever gonna go sword, I would definitely just go with Fibble Potion, because TP is the most consistent thing, right? So going TP with Sword and Fibble is the best in terms of scaling, as it's the most efficient sorting. Okay, so in terms of first items on Zed, these are the best in my opinion, which is Eclipse, Profane and Cycle Sword. Now, my personal favorite first item is Eclipse. Why? Because it's the most versatile, as in, you can go this item into any matchup basically, and it will never be a wrong answer. This item works without you actually going in, as you can proc it from just hitting one WEQ. This item is also good, not just for damage, it's also really good at saving you as well, as in it absorbs a lot of damage from the shield that it gives you. And the item is just very, very cheap as well. It's the cheapest item out of the three. The only downside to Eclipse is that it gives no lethality, so if you're building towards lethality afterwards, then obviously you're hindering yourself there slightly. But that's definitely something neglectable. Cyclosword is a really good item to rush if you can go into a matchup, so if it's a matchup that you can actually go into, so some sort of immobile champ, or even a mobile champ, just a squishy comp basically. If you can go this item, it's very, very good. The only downside is this item has a very, very awkward build path in terms of building Brutalizer. But if you are itemizing towards lethality, this is definitely a very, very strong first item option. And Profane, I mean, I rarely do this, but if it's a matchup that you just want to sit back and wave clear and basically scale, this is probably the best item in terms of scaling, because it is the strongest out of the three. It's just the most expensive, and it's also the hardest to utilize early game. So yeah, if you do want to sail and sit back and farm, then that's the item for you. In terms of what boots to buy, I almost always go with Celerity boots, but with the state of champs right now, I have been leaning more towards defensive as well in some games. My main options is between Lucidity though or Mercs. Now obviously if you're into a comp that has a lot of CC, or if you're into some sort of control mage that's hard to approach, you can definitely go Merc Treads. But just keep in mind obviously that you will not get any haste, unless you want haste in runes, such as the Legend Haste, or if you want Transcendence. Tabai as well could be fine in matchups that you fist fight a lot, or if enemy team consists of heavy AD. But again, I almost always go with Lucidity just because I value having the haste, which just gives you so much more freedom in team fights. Yeah, not much options towards boots, pretty standard stuff as well. Now, Eclipse has a lot of second items that you can run alongside it. The first option being Cycle Sword. Now, if you're into a comp where they have a lot of squishy targets, and your goal basically in the comp is to single out someone, then this is probably your best option, as in this build has very, very good single out. If you get on top of any squishy target, you will just basically one-shot them. It's very, very good in terms of that. Your second option would be Profane. Profane is probably the best scaling second item you can go if you still want to itemize burst as well, as in the more AD you have, the more stronger the active becomes, right, of Profane. So if you're struggling for options on what to buy, you can't go wrong with Profane. Alright, another item that is paired well with Eclipse would be Shojin. Now, Shojin is very good into comps that consist of bruises / tanks, so if you need DPS, then you should go with this item. This item gives you 12% increased damage, it gives you a lot of haste, and it also gives you HP, so you're also durable. Shojin is also very, very easy to buy as well compared to other items, as in the build path is very, very approachable, and the item is also not too expensive, so yeah. Okay, now second item options now for Cyclo Sword. First option would be Eclipse second. I mean, it's basically the same reasoning as what I said prior with Eclipse first and Cyclo Sword. If you want to single out someone, you can go this. It's probably the best combo in terms of that. Now, you can go Profane second as well. This is just to maximize on lethality and damage. This is probably the highest like lethality build that you can go. That's actually like consistent, because I mean, again, if you're sided, you have Profane for wave clear, and you can also have a really, really strong execute as well in your combo by having Profane. So this is probably your best option if you can buy it. Just be in mind, keep in mind, sorry, that it is an expensive item. And my personal favorite third option, having Cycle Sword first, would probably be Edge of Night. Just so you can't actually go into champs without getting nuked or anything. So I don't know, you're playing into Zoe for example, if you just ult onto her and you have Cycle Sword plus Edge of Night, Zoe has no counterplay into you, you just always kill her. Like what can she do? Right? So champs that you can't go into since you have some sort of CC, Ori, Zoe, etc. I would go Edge of Night second. No, thirdly, I never go to side them first. Like I rarely do it. Like, it's very niche. But in case you did go profane first, again the second item options are basically the same as the prior builds. Okay, now for third item, this will almost always be the same, where you want some sort of pen item so you don't fall behind in terms of damage, right? Since this is where most of your targets that you're killing will have quite a bit of armor at this point in the game. Now, if you want lethality, you go with Seroldas, obviously. Now, if you want Grievous and Armor Pen at the same time, you can go Mortal Reminder, you can go LDR. Now, the plus sides towards Mortal and LDR is the fact that it's cheaper than Serolda, but the massive downside is that it gives no haste, basically, and no lethality as well. Your best overall option will definitely be Serolda, but you can consider the other two in some games. And Cleaver, I would only go if you went Conqueror. So if you went Conqueror and you went the Eclipse Trojan build, then you can go Cleaver. Cleaver is very cheap, and Cleaver also breaks armor for your entire team, not just for yourself, so it's definitely an option to keep in mind. Also, it gives you HP as well, so it makes you way tankier. Now, if they had no armor at all at this point, and you're very like fed or accelerated, you can keep itemizing more towards lethality. So you could go another lethality item such as Edge of Night, Opportunity, or Axiom, etc. Okay, just to summarize everything with items now, here will be 3 full build examples of every single keystone that I've explained. So obviously for first, for Electrocute, I would opt in for full lethality. This is a very good example of a full lethality build. You have full take, so it's a strong early game item. You have opportunity to follow up on the heavy lethality that the item provides. Seroldas for the pen, Edge for survivability, and Axiom for team fighting. Now with the first strike, I would go Eclipse first. I mean, again, we know that this item is good offensively and defensively, so you can never go wrong. Profane, just high damage overall. Serolda for pen, Edge of Night for survivability, and Shojin for damage and for durability. And lastly, for the Shojin build path, I would first go Eclipse into Shojin, so DPS. Cleaver to also have DPS as well as Armor Shred for your entire team. Edge of Night for survivability, and Profane just to wrap up the build with a high damage scaling item. Okay, now that we have gone over both items and runes, let's talk about gameplay. Now, Zed's laning is very weak compared to most meta mid laners, as in Zed struggles to even walk up in most matchups, right? If you ever walk up into almost any single mid laner right now that's played, you're just going to lose your entire health bar. So the only way that Zed can reliably CS or play lane is obviously around his Q, right? So you can only really CS with Q, and just because you're using your Q to CS, you can't really harass. And even if you try to harass, Zed's damage early is not that high, so it's also quite pointless to even try to fight back. Another issue that stems from all of that is the fact that Zed can never get prio as well. How can a champ get prio if you can't even walk up, right? So with all of that in mind, your goals as a mid laner for Zed is last whatever CS you kind of Qs to maintain health, so don't obviously sacrifice your entire health bar just to get a last hit in. Just give up CS if you have to, and basically maintain your health and XP. Obviously CS what you can with Q, but again, just don't kill yourself trying to hit minions, right? If for some reason you are playing a lane that you can actually win early, so a lane could be like Castle, for example, where you can actually try to get prio early and have control over the wave in the first few levels, your goal would be just to basically use your Q to harass your opponent more so than to QCS. So if you're allowed to walk up, obviously you can just last them minions very easily, right, with your passive. So you don't want to waste your Q on minions in that sense, right? So if there is a scenario where you're actually winning early, hold your Q to deny enemy from walking up. And another thing to keep in mind actually, so if you're losing prio early in a lane, so like 9 out of 10 lanes, one thing I tend to do a lot as Zed, right, is I put a ward by raptors before lane starts. Why is that? It's because if you're getting pushed in, you will almost never get a chance to make an effective ward, right? So putting a ward before lane even starts is by far the best option that you have, because it shows jungler's pathing, and it also gives you a lot of leverage with what you can and can't do with your team, right? And obviously, if you're in a matchup that you can get prio early, so again, if you're into like Cassidy, you don't need to ward early. You can ward after the second or third wave, because you will get the move to ward, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind. Now, in terms of trading early, obviously your best option to trade is with your W, right? And you have to be very, very wary of a lot of things before using your shadow. So one thing is jungler positioning. So if you are walking up trying to combo and you're not aware of where the jungler is, you could be killed, right? So before you try to make aggressive plays, just keep in mind where jungler could possibly be and try to avoid him, right? Because yeah, I mean, ZW is such a long cooldown of an ability, so if you ever are ganked whilst the W is on cooldown, you're basically a free kill. Be wary of as well of when you throw out your shadow. So I don't know, let's say you're fighting at level 3, like by cannon wave, for example, right? If you're trying to combo but as the cannon is dying, don't just waste your shadow. Another thing to keep in mind is when you use your shadow. So Zed W is such a long cooldown, right? So the fact that if you do somehow waste the shadow, you lose so much pressure, as in your laner is free to do whatever you want if you have no shadow, right? You're basically a dead champ. So with that in mind, make sure you're very, very cautious and attentive on how you use your shadow. So again, let's say you're trying to make an aggressive trade, be wary of what jungler is. Like, consider the fact that if you throw out your shadow right now, could you possibly die to enemy jungler, right? Or let's say, I don't know, you're trying to CS a cannon, a siege minion. Don't throw out your combo before that minion is about to die. Obviously, get the minions first and then try to look for trades if possible. So yeah, just basically be very, very attentive of your shadow. If your shadow is somehow on cooldown, just be cautious and space well. Don't overstep, otherwise you will suffer in most matchups, right? AD mid laners in general get much better or much easier recalls to achieve than mages, as in Zed will start longswords almost every game, and obviously from longsword you can diversify right into Dirk if you want to, which is only 650 gold, which is relatively easy to get. Or you can even buy stack swords, because most items build out of swords. I mean, for example, Eclipse build out of 3 swords, or Profane or Voltaic build out of 2 swords. So both paths are very, very easy and achievable. So just bear that in mind, right? That you don't need an abundance of CS just to get your items. You can get components very, very easily. So again, that helps with the fact that you won't be able to get every single CS in most lanes, but yeah. So with all that's been said so far, this is mainly before your first recall. Now, once you have achieved your first recall, this is where it starts becoming a lot more fun, because Zed can obviously fight back at this point, right? So assuming you got a nice consistent recall, so you either went for a few swords, maybe even Dirk, or even a pickaxe, just depending on what you're building, right? This is when you can actually start to consider trading back, okay? Now, with ways to trade for Zed, obviously your standard combo is to WQ, right? Now, a little tip for throwing your shadow. Don't throw your shadow on top of your opponent. Always throw your shadow to the side of the opponent. Why? Because it makes it easier to line up your Qs. If you throw your shadow on top of your opponent, you're making the Q parallel to yourself, right? If you try to line it up, which makes it easier to dodge. So always place the shadow on the side, and it basically gives your opponent less room to avoid the Qs, as in you can zigzag your Qs way, way easier. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to combo, don't just obviously autopilot to shadow. Just consider pulling it to the side of your opponent, and you will see how much more Qs you'll hit just by this simple fact alone. Another thing to bear in mind when you're trying to make trades is the fact that Zed's Q does less damage if it passes through something, so if possible, if you can position yourself or your shadow in a way that if the Q hits, it will be directly towards your opponent, that would be a major advantage, as in that would do a lot more damage and could even potentially lead to you getting a solo kill. So another thing to keep in mind, I mean, if you have to combo the wave, fair enough, at least you'll get some damage off, right? But if possible, just try to get your combos directly onto them. Obviously, don't force anything stupid to make this happen, right? Okay, now that I've told you guys how to hit your WQs easier, there's also another thing to keep in mind. You cannot always throw in your shadow, because if you ever use your shadow aggressively on champs that can actually gap close or trade back, then you're basically fucked, right? Because they will run you down. So in matchups that can actually gap close and get onto you very, very easy, such as LeBlanc or Echo or Diana, there's a trick to throw shadow behind yourself. So basically, if you anticipate that the champ will dash onto you, you can throw your combo behind yourself. So basically, you throw your shadow behind, you Q where you where the opponent would blink to, basically. So you anticipate what they're about to do, and you would Q at that location and swap back. This leads to combos being heavily favored towards Zed, because you are trading them without actually engaging them. So if you ever pull off combos like this, you are always netting in a positive trade. So just keep that in mind in matchups that are way, way more oppressive, right? Now, if you pulled off a successful trade onto your opponent and you're struggling to do anything with your W downtime, one thing to keep in mind is your cooldowns are obviously reduced by your E. So as in, Zed's W gets his cooldown reduced by 3 seconds every time Zed hits his melee E. So if you hit a successful combo, for example, and you're sitting back, you can obviously then walk up before your W comes back up, right? By hitting your melee E to catch off your opponent on surprise, right? Off guard, basically. So that can be used to your advantage in laning phase. Now, with that in mind of how important cooldowns are on Zed, right? Another thing that you can do in your games is just quickly checking what your opponent's cooldowns also are. So if you're unaware of what your opponent's cooldowns are, so let's say, I don't know, I'm into LeBlanc, I can just quickly check all the wiki LeBlanc, and I can keep in mind all the cooldowns, right? This is something that you can use to your advantage. So LeBlanc W is what? It's a 15-second cooldown, so we know that it's a lot shorter than Zed's W cooldown, right? So just bear this in mind so that you can recognize your windows to play, so that you know when you can go in and when you can't go in, essentially. So if your jungler ever is looking to gank mid, you should never ever waste your shadow if possible, so that if your jungler does commit to a gank on mid, you can then follow up, right? So obviously if your jungler is hovering around mid, don't just throw out your combo if it doesn't lead to anything. Make sure you save your combo for your jungler, so that if he has some sort of CC, so I don't know if it's Hedgewadi head knockup, save your combo for when they go in, right? So that you can actually follow up their combo. Since if you do waste your combo before the gank even happens, you can't follow up and you're basically wasting that time. So before you ever do throw out combos, just keep in mind where your own jungler is as well, just so you know that you can follow up. Okay, so now that we have discussed the laning craze for Zed, now past level 6, Zed is able to start looking for angles and getting kills, right, since he now has his ultimate. Zed has a lot of different ways to approach kills with his ult, so I'll now go over some combos that will help you to know what to do and how to approach certain scenarios. So for example, what combo to use against a certain champion, or maybe even when to use a combo depending on the scenario that you're facing, right? Okay, this combo right here is essentially the best at diving whilst being the most safe as well, since you establish your escape path by throwing shadow behind yourself and you just ult in for the kill. Now the way you do this combo is you throw your shadow behind yourself, then you ult in, then you immediately swap to your second shadow, so you W back, then you Q. You can take your time if your opponent has no flash, but if your opponent has flash, maybe you have to be a bit quicker. But again, this combo is ideal in scenarios where you want to dive without taking too much tower damage, or if enemy has some sort of CC, you can just avoid it by throwing W behind yourself, right? So yeah, again on the screen you will see the combo input, just in case you didn't follow what I said. Similar to the first combo, but slightly different execution. I again W behind myself, I poke a bit, and now that I've poked safely, I can just finish it off now, right? Just a slight variation of the prior combo, but yeah. Alright, so this combo that I'm about to show is a combo that I like to do when my opponent uses his mobility, so his dash, his blink, whatever, and I'm quite low. So I'll ult in, I'll DPS a bit, then I throw my W before I back out, and I finish him off. So again, I ult in, I then throw my shadow before I teleport back, and then I'll finish off with my Qs and my shadows. If you're ever extremely fed on Zed, you can throw your Q before your ult, just guarantee your Q damage, just to get quick and easy kills. So essentially, you throw your Q before you swap into your ult. This means that your enemy cannot dodge your Q since if you threw your Q before they expected it, right? So it just means if you know you're fed and you know you can kill them, just do this combo essentially. Just a quick and easy kill, Q before R and one shot. This combo is probably the most versatile combo that Zed can do, which works in almost every single scenario, where you throw your W and E before you ult to make it so that your Qs are lined up nicely, and you throw your Qs afterwards whilst it's slowed. This combo works into basically everything, but in the most ideal scenarios where this combo works, it's probably when enemy has some sort of CC, like for example Ari or a stun, and you want to avoid it by placing the shadow away so that you can ult and swap the shadow to avoid that ability, right? If your opponent is low on HP and you just want to quickly finish them off without them expecting it, you can WQ flash auto so that you can just quickly burst them and catch them off guard, right? Alright, here another dive example that you can do on Zed. You ult, you hold your S key so you don't take tower aggro, then you just finish them off in a quick second and get out. This is good at making your enemy pressure to do something, and it also helps by making you not aggro tower as soon as you ult in, so you can take your time with what you want to do and just finish them off essentially. Very safe dive option. Alright, so this is going to be the Q buffer combo, where you basically aim to throw the Q before your enemy throws their major crowd control ability. So in this clip it's going to be obviously Orianna ult, but it can be on many champs and different abilities such as, I don't know, Malzahar ult, Syndra E, Lux Q, and so on, right? So you basically WE into ult, and then you Q immediately after your ult to buffer the shuriken before they throw out the CC ability. And then obviously you can swap to your recording shadow, depending on the scenario. But yeah, keep in mind you can also W before you Q, like I did in this clip as well. But that does make it a little bit slower, but it is safer, because obviously you can potentially even avoid that ability, right, by swapping to that shadow. But yeah. Okay, so now we have gone over laning phase basically, some combos, some niche scenarios on what to do. I'll now go over some examples in the mid to late game of duels and team fighting, so you can see if you apply everything that I've taught so far, how it could look in your actual games. Okay, so now with Zed's duels and team fighting in general, there are a few things to keep in mind, right? And that would be A, shadow placement, B, playing slow and controlled, and the third point being managing your energy. So what I mean by shadow placement is where you place your shadow and how you place it in fights can be very, very important. So, for example, if you are in a team fight or a duel and you place your shadow in a specific way, you can obviously create pressure, right? And essentially zone. And also in the opposite regards, if you throw away your shadow or if you waste your shadow, you lose a lot of pressure as well, right? So how you place your shadow and when you place your shadow is very, very important in regards to fighting with Zed. Now, playing control, that obviously means to play slow, right? Because again, this also just links to shadow placement. If you rush your combos and you miss your combos, not only will you obviously have no damage source, you will also be out of energy. So if you rush your combos and you waste your combos, you will be quite literally useless. So play slow. Better to take your time with your combos than to rush your combos and miss everything, right? And obviously managing energy. If you just throw out abilities without any like conscious thought, you will not be able to deal out a lot of damage in team fights, or you will not be able to maximize on the damage that you can potentially deal with. So obviously, if you don't have a blue buff or anything, you have to hit your combos right to get your energy refund back. So just keep all of those tips in mind. So essentially, just play slow, play controlled, don't rush your combos, and be wary of when you throw your shadow. Don't just waste your abilities. And yeah, now I'll get into some duels and some team fighting examples to show you guys. Okay, so now in regards to team fighting, Zed requires a lot of patience and control in team fights to maximize both zone control and damage control. So why you can't rush on Zed is basically because he has very high cooldowns, and if you do miss a combo, you miss out on energy refund, and if you have no energy, there's nothing for you to do in a fight, right? You'll just locked out from using your abilities, so you're just a target dummy. So in this example here, in this team fight, my team is obviously grouping around mid. There's a fight that's gonna break out soon. My Quinn is dead, so it's 5v4. But I shoved in bot wave, as you can see, it's by their base before I actually move towards this fight. Obviously, it's the most safe play, right? To shove and then move towards the fight. So now I'm gonna approach the backline after my team engages. See Kha'Zix jumps in, so I'll focus the Kha'Zix here. I will flash a wave so I don't get one shot by Lucian. But now I keep in mind that my shadow is next to Lucian here, so I will play with my shadow. I'll finish him off. Nice. Now, Yone is walking towards me here, and I know this, so I will bait by recalling and just kill him. Nice. And just like that, I salvaged a team fight that was lost by killing 3 members basically by myself, right? Just from everything that I just mentioned. Another team fight example here, right? So, context, my team has just been caught off. It's 5v3, as you can see. Zeri and Aatrox have both died. But since they're all grouped on Baron, and me and Lilia are both sandwiching, so she's approaching from top side, I'm approaching from bot side, we could sandwich them here and try to basically close them off, right? So my goal here now will be to obviously heavily chunk them, or to even try to get some kills without dying by playing with my range, right? So in this scenario right here, I have to go for Lilia. I can line up my shadows and hit the targets I want. So obviously the center is quite chunked. I will focus on the center, which I'll one-shot there. Now I can get out because I hit my melee E, right? And just like that, I just stopped Baron and won the game. We just all wiped them here now from how low they are. And yeah, just because I placed my shadows and played can't speak. Just because I placed my shadows in a nice manner and also played slow, I just saved the game. Just like that. Now, thank you firstly to anyone who got to this part of the video. Just remember guys to keep in mind that Zed is a champion that you cannot pick up overnight. It will take time and dedication to learn and master. The goal of this guide has been to enlighten you guys on what to look out for and what you guys could do to start off with my perspective, right? At the end of the day, we are all here to learn how to play Zed and also enjoy climbing with this champion, right? So yeah, I do hope that you guys have found this guide useful in some way and learned something from this, but please, if there is anything left out or unexplained, either comment down below or ask during my live streams on Twitch, link below, over on twitch.tv/bz_eus. God bless every single one of you, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.